Hello and welcome to Soul Love with Kimness. I am Kim van der Zande, your host, and I'm super excited to share another episode of Soul Love with you, where we share inspirational and empowering stories from the heart. We talk about the beauty and the shadows as both are part of the ascension journey, to remind you that you are powerful, you are magical, and to have trust in what you feel to be true deep within. Enjoy this next episode of Soul Love. Before we start the next Soul Love conversation, I want to invite you to check out my amazing book, Activating the Flower of Love, a sacred guide for manifesting your deepest desires and highest calling. This sacred book, filled with powerful tools and activations, will guide you to open your heart to the beauty and wisdom within you, empowering you to create the life you deeply desire from the foundation of love. You can find Activating the Flower of Love in all the major online and offline bookstores in ebook or paperback, or you can check it out through my website, kimness.nl, where you can also discover the different ways of working with me and the latest updates on new starting programs. Enjoy this next episode of Soul Love. Welcome everyone to a new episode of Soul Love, and today I have the honor to share sacred space with my beautiful soul sister, Dr. Lisa Bogue, and I'm very excited to share this sacred conversation with you. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you.
It's really beautiful. We have known each other now since a while, and it's beautiful to see your growth and your expansion and how you're stepping into the sacred space of even sharing more of your magic. And I love how you are, well, in a certain way, blending both worlds, because you're a doctor, you're helping people in the more, like, I don't know how you would pronounce it, but more the way of the brain and the way of understanding and knowing with the mind, but then you're also infusing your beautiful divine teachings. And yeah, and I'm wondering, like, if I think a lot of people that will tune in will maybe resonate with this. How did you start to infuse both? Was that always something that was already within you because you've chosen to walk the path and then chosen to infuse the more spiritual things into your practices in your own unique way?
I love that question, actually. I think it's like a mix of a bunch of things. I think when I was younger and had more space in my life,
yes,
I was more connected to my sense of just knowing, and certainly into, like, I was very kinesthetic. I could always like feel people's energy, things like that.
Yeah.
And I actually liked to write when I was younger too. And then I got, busy with school, and in medicine, sometimes I would have a sense of like something going on with a patient, or
yes,
if I was going to prescribe a certain medication to a patient, sometimes I would have a feeling, oh, don't do that. Like, that will be bad for this person.
Wow.
So
yes,
every so often it would, surface. And then sometimes when I was working in psychiatry residency, you do a lot of nights working in the emergency. And sometimes I would just have the feeling like this person is actually seriously suicidal, like they have to be admitted. Right. And there was always bed pressure. So it was always but sometimes my gut would just be so clear.
Yeah.
So those little things would bleed through even when I was focused more on the following my training, being a good doctor, kind of thing, right?
Yes, yeah.
And then I was doing, so I did my psychiatry residency after medicine, and I thought, well, now I'll know how to really help people.
Yes.
And then I felt like, oh no, I need to do more training. So then I did psychoanalytic training to learn even more about psychotherapy. And that was good, but I still felt like I'm missing something really important. What am I missing?
Yes.
And just around that time, I just happened upon a book written by Alberto Viodo, who was a psychologist who went down and trained with shamans in the Andes in Peru, and came back and created this 4 Wind Society where he taught what he learned.
Yeah. And
I just found this book, and I'm going, oh, I have to do something about this. And it just happened he was doing an introductory talk at a place I could drive on a week I already had booked off.
Universe, the synchronicities of the universe. Yes, I love that.
Yeah. And it just turned out like I had my son that week and I couldn't find, nobody else was available to have him, but the place had like a day program for kids. So I took him with me and we had just got a new car that was very comfy. So we drove like across New York State in this car and we had such a blast. We had so much fun at the program. And I learned about Alberto's program. And I was like, oh, let's do this. And it was funny because it was not something I'd ever contemplated in my mind brain. Oh, I need to do this. Right? My feet were signing up before I knew what was going on.
Yes.
And then the very first class of the very first day, he was talking about how the shamans have this kind of model that they use where they look at the levels at which you can engage healing. So you can work at the level of the body, which we do all the time, right? Yes. You can work at the level of the mind and emotions, which is what we do when we do psychotherapy. Yes. But you can also work at the level of the soul. And it has its own language. So like ceremony and dance and ritual and that kind of thing, and art. And then you have the level of the spirit, which is the level of like pure energy. So things like tapping and Reiki, right?
Yes.
And so I was so struck because I'm going, oh, that's what I was missing. I was missing. I need to know how to work at the level of the soul and to work at the level of the spirit, right?
I love that.
So so then I spent many more years investigating ways of learning to do that. So, and it was funny because each training I did, I would say like to myself and my guides, like, okay, so am I supposed to be a tapper now? Or am I supposed to just be like an Akashic record specialist? And every time, like the message was always, no, integrate. Yeah. Right.
Because I think it's so important, as you shared. There are so many nuggets in what you just shared, but I think it's so beautiful that this is the holistic way as well, like in the new earth way, where you are combining everything, like the body, like the mind, like the soul, and like energy work, because that is the totality. And I love, as you shared in your story, like consistently feeling that there needs to be more, like you've learned something new and then you felt, okay, but this doesn't feel complete. And I think a lot of people tuning into this will also feel that, like, but it already starts like at a young age, feeling someone's emotion, knowing, listening to your gut feeling. And I think that's so important, even in whatever occupation you are, whatever thing you're doing, following that guidance, and you then creating this beautiful momentum where this course comes on your path that gives you the next steps of where you are being guided to go. But what I love about your works, you're doing it all together. And I think that's because sometimes we can either be too much in, like say, the mind space, or too much in only energy. But in the end, for me as well, embodiment is about bringing all of them together. It's not about only creating an energy or only creating in the 3D world. It is combining all the elements of our being. And I think this is a beautiful, clear explanation about how that works. It's also in healing, in facing trauma and everything. It is facing trauma and healing on all these different levels of our, So I don't know how you stepped in your next level, but I love it's such a clear explanation. For me, somehow I see it more clearly, like the body, the mind, but then also the soul and the energetic level, and bringing that together.
Yeah, I find it's like such a helpful way of making sense of all of the things that are out there. Because sometimes people will say like, what should I, what kind of work should I do? Like, there's so many ways to work. And I think what you said is so important, that like, because they're all connected, you need ways of approaching all the different levels. And we know that we tend to kind of get in a rut and do our thing, right? So get in a psychotherapy rut and go to therapy for 20 years. But then there's stuff that doesn't quite shift doing that. But then we can do the other thing. We can work in the energy over and over and over. But if we're missing some of those psychological pieces that are really sticking, then we get stuck with that too, right? So it's so powerful to have ways of working at all the different levels. And it makes sense. If we're moving into unity consciousness, we're being whole beings, then we want to be working with all of the different levels.
Yeah, I love that, because what I see a lot is that, like, either way, like the opposites are sometimes so present, or we can be totally in the energy, but we're not integrating it, and we're still having the mind chatter, the 3D mind chatter that is still preventing us from moving forward, or just the other direction where we're so trying to force. But in energy, or in past lifetimes or whatever, there are certain energies that don't shift yet and that are still blocking you. So it is the in the totality of our being that is being invited to elevate, because that is indeed the energy of going into unity. But it's also it's also about embracing every part. Like we have these different dimensions of our being, and it's also taking our physicality with us, and our physicality sometimes needs more time and more compassion and more nourishment and more, yeah. So I love that. Yeah. And I think also just to crack it open, that not one of them is per se the solution, the totality. It's not per se that only in energy work we get the solution, or only in working with our beautiful mind and creating mindset things. It is the totality. And I think in that we also get I don't know how that's for you, but more unity consciousness, that even in healing, it is like, okay, or you either do this or you either do that. But people will discover, like you share, having therapy for 20 years, but somehow it doesn't shift, or doing energy work and always being in meditation, but somehow 3D life doesn't look the way we are desiring it to be, because we're not looking at a totality. It's still separation. Somehow that's what I feel like. If you look at it, it's still separation. Like, okay, this is the solution, but it's not. It's, yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that tends to happen, what I'm noticing, is that like we'll get our 2 or 3 favorite ways of working, our go-to ways, and we do that over and over. But what I find as we're moving into unity consciousness is that we'll reach like another evolutionary level.
Yes.
And the things we've been doing are not the thing anymore.
No.
Which is very frustrating, right? Because we go, okay,
Yes.
Something's going on, I need to deal with it. And
Yeah.
we go to our go-to ways, and we do the ways, and we do the ways, and we do the ways, and then we go, nothing's changing. No. And it can be really frustrating. But often what that's about is it's time for another way, because it's kind of like what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So there's something too, as we move into unity consciousness, about being open to exploring like new ways of addressing things. And I think too, you know, we have lots of new modalities coming online that work in those higher vibrations, right?
Yes, yeah.
So
but
I think there's something about
evolving. Yeah.
Yes. So for me, like, I like to bring this kind of like playful attitude to it. Like, oh, well, let's see. Let's see what the next step might be. And then as soon as you say that, it's like opening the door, and the universe will bring you whatever it is as soon as you're open to it, right?
Yeah. And then being willing to say yes to whatever comes on your path. It's also because the universe is consistently giving us signs, like you feeling there, like years back, feeling there needs to be something more, or feeling that something is not complete yet. And then this beautiful course comes on your path this weekend where everything aligns. But then it's also you then saying yes, because you could also say, no, I had these plans and I'm not doing this right now. But you felt like, as you shared, your feet were already walking towards it, but you did it. And I think that's also an important lesson. And it's letting go of how we think the future needs to look like, and how we think like the healing modalities that we've learned. And yes, maybe a couple of years back they did work, but now we are still raising our vibration. We are being invited to look at everything at new and to pioneer in new ways. And I don't know how you, just in your own journey, and support others in like, how do you, what kind of tools do you use to stay? Because for me, it's like, it is the resilience. It is the resilience of being able to navigate, even if it's not clear about what we navigate, but what do you use for yourself to navigate then the new, and to say, yes, okay, if the old modalities doesn't work, how do I open myself up to receive? Or
so a couple things. Like, one is this, so in the way that at each step along the way, I've had the feeling, oh, there's more, like there's something more, right? Also, like, there's this arc through my whole life of always knowing, like, there's so much that we don't see, right? I love that quote in Hamlet, you know, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy, right? So that's kind of my motto. There are always more things. And so part of it is about just being curious and remembering to ask, because what I find is, like, when I'm stuck is the time I least remember to ask, but the time I most need to. Right? So instead of saying, oh, I wonder what's next, I butt my head against the wall.
It needs to go this way, or
and then I'll finally say, oh, okay, ask a question. And then I'll ask my guides, okay, this isn't really doing it. Show me what I'm missing, or like, show me what's the next step. And so there's something really important about asking. And then, as you say, then when something comes in, being open to whatever that is. But sometimes people will ask me, well, how do you know what the thing is? How do you know when the thing comes? And for me, I think of it, it's like surfing a wave. Like you don't go out in the ocean and surf when there's no wave.
No.
You don't make yourself surf and the water's not moving.
It now needs to happen. Yes.
Yeah. What you do is you get all ready, and well, people do, I don't, but people do. They wait for the wave, right? And then when the wave is there, you jump on it, right? And then you have not only the power of yourself, but you have the power of the wave under you. And so that's how I feel about navigating life. It's like you ask the question, and then you see where the wave comes from, and then you jump on the wave, and then you have the power of the wave under you, moving you, right? And also showing you the direction.
Yes, but then it's moving with the momentum. It's allowing, but there are so many things in that, because it's like when we are in stress, or when we, like in situations where we most of the time desire the answers but are not asking, it's like we contract our fields. And I love, as you share, those are the moments where we, in a way, need reminders to open our fields and to then ask for guidance. I love that, because just also in ourselves, it's like it's a huge step to ask for support. It's a huge step to receive and to step into that space, but also to remind ourselves in the moments where we need it. Like, okay, I've now gone into an old pattern. I've now gone into contracted states where I'm not being able to receive the next guidance or the next step. But I love also the vision of the waves, because it truly is like, it's like asking, and then, but you feel it in your body. Like, that's what I notice with me when things come on my path, or guidance or synchronicities. I feel this excitement in my body, or this leap, or my heart opens, or it feels expansive instead of contracting. I think for a lot of people that will already be the answer. If something happens and you feel excitement, even if it's just for a millisecond, then you know that is your guidance, instead of going, because sometimes we can go into the mind very quickly and then the sign is gone again. But it's listening, and I think that's important as well, to listening to the stillness, becoming still within ourselves, and then listening, being able to listen to our bodies, to our emotions, and what they are trying to share.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another thing that I've been noticing as we move into unity consciousness is, like, I tend to be a very self-sufficient dude. So yes. I'm very happy asking myself questions and asking my guides questions. But I'm noticing that sometimes now, one of the things I'll be guided to do is, like, have an expansive conversation with someone. And my guides will show me who. It's like, you need to talk to Barb, or you need to talk to Terry, or you need to, like, whoever it is. But they'll show me. And I don't know what the question is or what the conversation is. No. But as we start talking and things start unfolding, then the energy shifts. And so I love that. That's almost like a new modality, is this expansive conversation that can happen.
I think it's interesting. I'm tuning more into the Flower of Love alchemy journey that I'm being guided to create. But I use that modality each morning myself. And each time I do it, I clear my field and I purify whatever and harmonize whatever wants to be harmonized. But then I receive inspiration. So last week as well, I received a message of, you need to send this person a message to open some portals. But then it's just saying yes and not thinking about it. And I think that's the new way as well. Like, okay, who knows, whatever wants to happen, but it's being in the openness, and also being in the wonder, and being in the yes, even though you don't know what the next step is. So I love that, like because it truly is. If we then receive the guidance, are we then willing to leap? And the new guidance might be totally different than what we thought before. It's like, but then it's what I noticed within my own journey as well, is like, each time we are willing to leap, the next puzzle piece reveals itself. But if we do not leap the next time, it doesn't open, because these guidance, like you shared, you're being called to send someone a message. Within that message, maybe the next message comes. But if you never send that message because your mind thinks something of it, it will never happen. So I think that's beautiful. Like, it is, sometimes people are already searching for the end goal, but it is in the little steps that we reach the end goal, that we reach the higher purpose, but it is being willing to take the first steps and being willing to listen to the calling that we feel within ourselves.
And I think that's one of the big differences in how we operate in unity consciousness, is that playing with the unknown and like stepping into the unknown, because we have our guide. It's like we have the wave showing us the way.
Yeah.
And knowing that, then we need to like step in and play with the unknown, because like the things that are available in unity consciousness are so like magical and amazing, but they're not things that we're familiar with, having come from where we've come from. And so we can't really conceive of them necessarily, right? Like we might have a vague idea. Like I need to have a conversation with so-and-so, or there's something about crystals today, right? Like that might be all you have. And then you need to like step into it and ride the wave, and then you'll see what unfolds. And what unfolds is always like so magical and amazing, but perfectly. And it's like this perfectly cohesive story. It makes total sense when you get there. But you don't know where you're going when you step through the door, right?
I love that. Yeah, and that's true. But I also, as you share, I almost feel like this Sherlock Holmes that is going on this discovery hunt, being open, and then finding the connections as you go, as you move forward. Because truly it is, when you follow that path, beautiful synchronicities come on your path and things align, and you suddenly see the red line that is going through the story that you didn't see before. So I love that. Yeah. But was it always like, did you always felt that within yourself, or what supported you in your journey to become more comfortable in following those inner nudges? And
I think practicing. I can remember when I first went into private practice, I had a psychotherapy practice, and I would be sitting with a person and they would be talking, and I was fresh out of my training indoctrination. And I would have like, the person would say something and this response would come into my head. And at first I would go, oh, I don't think I'm supposed to say that.
So,
and then, but I would listen again. And if it came 3 times, which of course it always did, then I would say the thing.
Yeah.
And what I found when I said the thing is it was like that opened a door. Like it opened a whole new conversation about something I didn't know about the person and wouldn't have found if I hadn't come from that off the wall place. When I remember last April, I was seeing this student, and she was not doing well academically, and she had decided to withdraw. But around that time, realized maybe she had some attentional issues. So she saw another psychiatrist and got a medication for that. And then her attention got quite a bit better. And then she was going, oh, maybe I could have kept in school. But it seemed clear that all the signs were pointing her to withdraw, right?
Yeah.
And so I suddenly had this vision of her on a stage with like lights and like on a theater stage, right? Like it was a wooden, you know how theater stage is a wooden creak, and like there's all the lights and like the floor lights. And I said to her, like, I didn't know why this was coming into my head, but I said to her, you know, I'm having this vision of you, or image. I usually say image, so it's not too woo. Having this image of you like on a stage. And she goes, I love theater.
Oh, wow.
And she said, when I was in high school, we were getting all ready for this production, and I had the lead, and then COVID came and we didn't get to perform it. She goes, I love that stuff. And she goes, it's funny. My dad said to me last week, you know what? You love performing. What about doing that again?
Yeah, beautiful. Yes. Yeah. And then so it's also for her confirmation. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which was like, because often when I'm sitting with people, I'll ask my guides, like, please show me what is in the highest. Like, please show me what is the highest I can facilitate here.
Yeah.
Right. And so it felt like that was kind of like it was energizing her wave in that direction, like the direction that was calling her. Right. So that instead of feeling like, oh, I failed, she feels like, oh, this other thing is calling me, because that's how the universe works. Right. If a door is closing, it's because something else is way more magical and cool is calling us. Right.
It is. Yeah, it truly is, because we're all in our unique way are pioneering. So most of the time we are being guided to create something that is beyond what we thought was possible. And I love, as you shared as well, like it is you showing up, and that's with every one of us. When we feel these insights, it's not being afraid to share something that might be different, because that is how we create together a new earth, and how we can support each other and elevate each other. And like in this beautiful story, you being willing to share your vision, your image you received. But by that, indeed, you created a wave, or you supported her wave to move in a direction that was aligned for her. But if you didn't do that, then the energy would have stopped. So it's almost, it is like, and I think that is also for the future. It's following these energy waves, but also seeing how, when we are being willing to step out of our comfort zone and just share, even if we do not know how or when, that we're supporting this elevation, that we're supporting this to awaken the spark in each other. And but it's a journey of being brave, because it's not something that we have been taught. It's not something that we learn at school, because it's something within our emotions, within our feelings, within the depths of our being, that we are being called to just share. And sometimes there's also what I know, it are sometimes very random things that you think, okay, I once in a session had something with bunnies. I thought, I'm not going to say something with bunnies in this session, but in the end, it was totally aligned for her in that now moment, that shared something magical for her. And then we can, from our mind, can think, okay, I'm not going to share this because this is weird, but that is our judgment about it. And it's really being open. Yeah, it's beautiful, but it's showing up. That's also what I noticed within my own journey. And sometimes I'm being called to create a certain program or an offering or a session. And then the only guidance I get is, you need to show up. And when I show up, the next steps will reveal itself. But I think that's also the future, being willing and able to say yes, like you sharing to receive guidance on calling someone, you showing up. And in the showing up, you get beautiful gifts and new inspiration comes up and new waves are being created together. Because I think that's also the new for me. Like, it is us coming together in sacred conversations, us elevating, that creates like even more waves of momentum. I love the wave. I love the wave image. Yeah, we need to create some waves of new, like that's the future. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, I think presence is so central, right? It all comes from being present.
Yeah.
And then when you're present, anything can happen, right? All kinds of cool stuff can come in as soon as you're present and open to whatever it is, right? And you have to, I think, like, I try to remember that as we're moving into a new way of being, that the things we already know are not going to accomplish that, because the things we already know got us to where we were. And where we were is not at all where we're going. And so, we just have to kind of park all that at the door.
It is. Yeah. It is.
And it's hard. It takes a lot of courage to park everything you know about navigating in the world at the door.
Yes.
And then be present to some other thing that might not make sense to your rational mind.
Yes.
Right? Like that takes some courage. Yeah. But the more that you do it, then the more you see what kind of magic and fun unfolds from it. And you understand how perfect it is. And then you're galvanized to do it again. Yeah. Right. And then eventually it becomes like now sometimes when a plan gets derailed, then I respond, instead of with, I respond with,
yes. Yes, I love that.
I wonder what is being called for here, because my mental plan is being kiboshed, which, it means there's something better. So I think someone it's also trusting.
It's trusting, because someone once said, like, the moment we get a detour, the moment our plane is being delayed or anything, watch, because then something will happen, something magical, or the universe is giving you a sign, or it is in the moments where our plans are changed. And so I love that. But I also love, as you shared, and I think that's a beautiful tip. Like you said, if I receive it 3 times, I'm going to say it. And I think that's beautiful, because sometimes we can feel like, okay, when is the moment to share a certain thing I feel within myself? But if it becomes so clear, and you can also say to your guides and to your higher self and to your intuition, share it with me 3 times. I love that. That's because that's a concrete step we can take. So I love that as a beautiful share. But there's so much there in just navigating this new earth. And it is even the same, like, we are now being invited to really step into our next level, but it is not per se something new, because it's coming even more home into our essence, like our intuition, our body, our soul. It is the essence of our being. It's not something new. But if you look back, like a couple of years, or maybe many years back, when the first mobile phone came out, a lot of people found that very out there, and they thought, okay, I'm used to my phone with my cable on it, and that's. So in things we can grasp with our mind, even then we find new things scary, and there is a time we need to get adjust to it. So now we're being invited, because we can't see those things and we can't get the 3D validation of a physical thing. We're now being invited to step into a much bigger step of trust, of knowing, but this is the next evolution. Because otherwise we would have stopped at creating fire, or we would have stopped at, I don't know, maybe the trains, and then, but that's just a natural way of how we evolve. And it's consistently someone being willing to pioneer. And if you're tuning into this podcast, you're also a pioneer, because you're already tuned in to these higher vibrations. You already know there's more, but and what I love in your story is it's co-creating with all the elements. So it's not only being in meditation and then having the most magical experiences, but it's also about living it and anchoring it and infusing it in every part of your being. And I think that's the powerful message for this podcast. I don't know if you have a last thing you want to share, or a last suggestion or tip or advice or inspiration.
Yeah, I love that awareness that it can look like we're doing something new, but it's really about inhabiting more of ourselves.
Yes.
Right. So it's really about navigating from the wholeness of ourself rather than just our logical mind. Right. It's about using like the body's ability to perceive energy, to feel that wave, and using the sense of the heart, and where does the heart feel expansive, and knowing that that's where the wave is, right? So it's about using the totality of ourselves to navigate through life, rather than just the mental, right?
It is.
So it's like navigating in wholeness into wholeness.
It is. Yes, I love that. Beautiful. Yes. Yeah. I love that. And maybe for everyone to, after you've listened or viewed to this podcast, ask the universe the question and wait for the wave and see where it takes you. And then being brave enough to say yes to the wave you feel and the inspiration. And Thank you, Lisa, for sharing your beautiful stories, sharing your energy and your vibration. If you want to know more about how you can work with Dr. Lisa, you can find all the information below this interview. And for now, I want to thank everyone tuning in. And thank you, Lisa. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next Soul Love podcast. So for now, much love. Thank you for joining this episode of Soul Love. If you want to find out more about what we do, you can find it below. And I'll see you in the next episode. Much love.